Hello again. Now, President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa will challenge the Section 89 panel report regarding the Phala Phala farm in the Constitutional Court. The ANC's National Executive Committee this afternoon still meeting, discussing this report. Tomorrow, Parliament will be debating and voting on whether to adopt the findings of the report. Well, let's discuss his views. That's the New South Institute Director, Ivor Chipkin. Ivor, good afternoon. Welcome to today. I must say I read your opinion piece, or one of the latest opinion pieces you've written about this one with very keen interest. And I thought, let's discuss it, because you say Phala Phala is not a crisis for South Africa. It is not a crisis for South Africans. It is only a crisis for Cyril Ramaphosa and his presidency. Why?
Well, because I think, by the way, and thank you very much for introducing me with the title of our new name, the New South Institute. We're going through a very big branding change, big branding exercise. So thank you very much for doing that. From next year, we will no longer be the Government and Public Policy Institute. We'll be the New South Institute. So I think there's something very positive in the current news. We're so used to discussing South Africa and everything in terms of profound and unending crises, that we seem not to be able to recognize when a crisis is not really one. So let's think a little bit about, take a step back and think around one of the findings of the Zondo Commission with regard to Parliament. The Zondo Commission was quite damning of Parliament, and essentially it argued that Parliament has not been acting in terms of the Constitution now for a very, very long time. And why? What Zondo said was that Parliament has a constitutional responsibility to hold the executive to account, and it has not been doing that. One of the ways in which we know it hasn't been doing that is that it has not been investigating executive malfeasance when the information is in the public domain. It's usually taken some extraordinary event for Parliament to begin an investigation, like it did in the state capture case. In that particular case, it took the firing of Praveen Gordhan, it took some of the work that I was doing around the betrayal of the Promise Report, etc., for Parliament finally to act. In this particular case, something very different happened. Information entered the public domain around malfeasance, alleged malfeasance by the president, a mysterious case of hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars packed away in his couch. And it was Parliament that launched, with of course the political party played a role, but it was Parliament, the institution of Parliament itself, that commissioned an investigation, the Section 89 investigation. So it was Parliament, if you like, acting on its constitutional mandate that has provoked the current crisis. Well, I don't regard that as a crisis. I regard this as Parliament finally, we've been wanting Parliament for 30 years, to start to perform its role. And here we have a Parliament finally beginning to perform its role by acting against a sitting, or asking a sitting president to be accountable to the institution. I regard that as something very positive. The fact that many people, including myself, are fond of the current president, who thinks actually he's been performing well, that he's responsible for a whole range of important initiatives of reforming the public service, for example, of strengthening the NPA. The fact that he's responsible for those initiatives doesn't detract from the fact that Parliament, for the first time in 30 years, is beginning or showing signs of beginning to play its institutional and constitutional role.
Yeah, so you are saying there's no constitutional crisis, but he is the CEO of South Africa, Inc. If the CEO of the company, the head of the company, is facing challenges like he's facing currently, surely the rest of the company will feel the impact of that and then could also be in a crisis.
Well, I'm not sure that we can compare South Africa to a corporation. We're not that far yet in the neoliberal agenda that the entire company resembles a corporation. But I do take your point. This is a challenge to the president. It represents, from that point of view, a kind of a crisis of governance. And again, it's a huge setback for his own presidency, a huge setback for his own personal ambitions of becoming a president after after the December ANC conference, and it does raise some profound questions about whether the current trajectory of constitutional reform, of institutional reform, which is happening in the civil service, in the NPA, around economic reform, whether those things will continue. And of course, many people are very invested in the continuity of those programs, including myself. I'm very favorable to them. So there is a sense of deep and profound worry about whether those programs will continue if he's thought to leave, and I share those concerns. But we can't think that the questions around him and the crisis which is produced around him are a constitutional crisis. They're absolutely not.
Okay.
This is Parliament finally performing its constitutional role.
Yeah. What I wanted to unpack before we conclude, Ivor, is in your opinion piece, you talk about 3 symbolic transformations which you say are taking place. One around that conflation of that the ANC is the nation. You're saying the ANC is not the nation, which is very obvious, of course, but many people have conflated that. The party, secondly, you say, is not the state. There should be that clear line of division between the two. And then you say democracy. Institutions matter more than individuals. So we should not really be hell-bent on being preoccupied with personalities.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of the argument. And I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think we have a tendency in South Africa for a very, very long time to be preoccupied with individuals. We're always looking for a messianic figure that is going to deliver us from whatever terrible situation it is we're in at the time. Mandela, and then when we looked to Zuma to redeem us or save us from the crisis of Mbeki, we then looked to Ramaphosa to save us from the crisis of Zuma. All of the situations we look to the personality of individuals, some kind of messianic, charismatic figure to lead us out of the current crisis, a kind of messianic figure. I think that is not what democracy is about. Democracy is really around building institutions that can mediate conflicts of interest, that can manage crisis. Really what matters is institution building. It seems to me that finally we are beginning to see signs, and this crisis which we're currently in is a sign, as I was saying, for the first time in 30 years, that we're seeing Parliament begin to exercise its institutional role. I think this is a very positive thing for development, for democracy going forward, if this is the beginning of momentum. Of course, that doesn't detract from the fact that there's a terrible political crisis. But I think if it's true that Parliament is beginning to exercise its institutional power in this regard, this is a very good crisis to be in.
So basically, you opine that we should put our trust as citizens in our key institutions, like Parliament, which you argue is beginning to show signs of holding executives to account.
Yeah, I mean, I think if South Africa has a future, to the extent that we have a future, the future is not in individuals. The future is in institutions, whether we're able to build well-functioning institutions, Parliament, a civil service that is able to respond adequately and deliver services, accountability mechanisms. Really what matters are those institutions of the state subject to popular control. That is really what matters for democracy. And maybe what we're seeing in the current crisis is the beginnings of our Parliament as an institution to exercise its constitutional role.
Yeah, so if they continue to do that, it doesn't really matter who takes over the presidency. If Matamela Ramaphosa and the ANC decide he can step back, because, as you argue, the institution of Parliament will be able to hold him to account. Are you hopeful?
So I think it depends on the moment. I think like all of us, I think we're all living with very high levels of anxiety and concern. But I do think that there are some very positive green shoots which are present, and I think we should identify and recognize those green shoots, else we're going to accidentally or deliberately trample on them. And I think this is a green shoot. And I think it's something which we should nurture. We should celebrate. We should notice. We should observe. We should recognize and give recognition to the fact that a parliament which really has been a drag on our democracy for 30 years looks like for the first time it's beginning to exercise its institutional autonomy as an institution which if you like, safeguards the rules of the game of democracy. That, for me, is a very positive sign. And for the moment, I will say I'm feeling a little bit optimistic, yeah.
Thank you very much. Ivor Chipkin, the director of the New South Institute, sharing some of his insights and views about this whole Phala Phala farm scandal and how, of course, it relates to the state of our democracy.